Hi, everybody. I'm Brittany Lewis, a breaking news reporter here at Forbes. Joining me once again is Congresswoman Debbie Wasserman Schultz. Congresswoman, thank you so much for joining me.
Thanks for having me as always, Brittany.
You and I had a conversation the day before the government shutdown. And aside from the government shutdown being a possibility, a strong possibility, to now being in day 17 of the shutdown, it doesn't seem like that much has changed. So to start off the conversation, can you talk to us about the moment Democrats see themselves in day 17 of the shutdown?
Well, I think it's more appropriate to talk about the moment that the Republicans have plunged the country in. I mean, Speaker Mike Johnson has shut the House down because he is doing the bidding of Jeffrey Epstein's best friend in the White House by insisting on, ignoring the explosive healthcare cuts that are about to befall millions of people, by the spiraling costs of people's household budget. And he is callously preventing us from being able to sit down at the negotiating table and work together to find a resolution to the end of the year fiscal budget, which must include canceling the cuts, lowering healthcare costs, and saving Americans' healthcare alongside funding the government. Otherwise, you're going to have millions of people who are going to be priced out of their ability to pay for healthcare, and those costs will get shifted to millions of Americans.
I know that publicly it seems like Democrats are in their same position. Republicans haven't changed their position. But privately, are there any conversations happening between the two parties? What does that communication look like?
Well, Mike Johnson has made conversations impossible because he decided to go AWOL and keep his caucus out of Washington, send them all on vacation, and have no activity whatsoever. It is hard for me to wrap my mind around the fact that I have the sixth most signups of any district in the country in Florida for the Affordable Care Act policies. The top 10 districts in the whole country are in Florida. That includes most of the Republicans that represent this state. And the fact that I have 203,000 people in my district alone who will see explosive increases in their healthcare costs, and 82,000 people who will lose their health care entirely. There's no wonder that Marjorie Taylor Greene is, who got a look at what it would be like for her people in Georgia, is saying that we need to come to the table, and Republicans are ignoring this looming crisis.
I do want to talk about Marjorie Taylor Greene. She's a firebrand conservative. She's usually in lockstep with the GOP and President Trump. You have worked with other conservatives like Congressman Tim Burchett on different legislation. And I want to talk about if you can work with her because she has been vocal on healthcare. She said that she thinks President Trump is getting bad advice on the shutdown. And she said that she doesn't think it's, quote, good advice that Republicans ignoring the health insurance crisis is going to be good for midterms, and added that she thinks it's actually going to be bad for midterms. And then she's also said, I'm not going to stand there and just keep talking the talking points when my own adult children can hardly afford health insurance premiums. And she also said that it's the number one issue that she hears in her district. So is there anywhere that you can work with her, or is there any movement with Democrats when it comes to working with Marjorie Taylor Greene on healthcare?
I know we're willing to work with anyone on the other side of the aisle to come together to make sure that we can head off this crisis that is continuing to be fueled by Republicans, by the Republican leadership, by Jeffrey Epstein's best friend in the White House. And it's just completely avoidable. I'm glad that Marjorie Taylor Greene recognizes that this is a critical issue. Honestly, if you don't have your health, you don't have anything. I'm a breast cancer survivor, as I've shared with you, and I know what it's like to face a life-threatening illness, and everything else in your life fades into the background. Pricing people out of their ability to afford healthcare coverage is going to send millions more Americans to the emergency room. They will be diagnosed with illnesses at later stages. There will be people who will die for lack of health insurance coverage. And I'm glad to see that there are some Republicans, and I know there are more than just Marjorie Taylor Greene, who believe that we need to make sure that we end this healthcare crisis. It's totally avoidable. We just have to sit down and negotiate how we're going to approach ensuring that those enhanced premium tax credits are extended. The notices for these premium increases are going to start going out in the next couple of weeks. I'll give you an example, Brittany. I have a father of 5 who reached out to my office and told us about the 297% increase in his health insurance premiums that are coming, $18,000 more a year. That is absolutely impossible for nearly everyone in this country, except billionaires, who Republicans took care of in the big ugly law with, $4 trillion in tax breaks.
I know that you say that President Trump and the Republicans bear responsibility here for the shutdown. Republicans say this is the Democrats' shutdown. A new poll shows that there's plenty of blame to go around. According to a new AP NORC poll, around 6 in 10 Americans say Trump and Republicans bear a great deal or quite a bit of responsibility for the shutdown, and 54% of Americans think the same about Democrats. And 75% of Americans say each side deserves at least a moderate share of the blame here. What are your thoughts on these numbers, and where do you think the disconnect is?
Well, the disconnect is that the House Republicans are refusing to even come to work. I mean, how do you resolve a problem? How do you come to a compromise if one side isn't even coming to work? I mean, they're on vacation. They've abandoned their post. And we have to stop. They have to stop the my way or the highway politics that they've been engaging in, because we have millions of people who are dramatically going to be impacted if we don't resolve this healthcare crisis. You can tell by the polling, not just that AP poll, but many other polls across the country show that the reason that people think that Democrats are quote unquote winning this fight is because they agree that we should make sure that healthcare stays affordable, because they know that if you don't have your health, you don't have anything, because they know they need to be able to go to the doctor when they're sick, instead of using the emergency room as their primary access point. They know that 15 million people have been cut off by Republicans from Medicaid, and that it's going to even get worse if we don't resolve this healthcare crisis right now. All we have to do is come to the table and talk. We've negotiated much more challenging problems at the end of the fiscal year than this. And look, none of us trust Donald Trump. I mean, he has been firing people only to have to hire them back because he went too far. A court stopped him temporarily from firing people that he did in a partisan way during the shutdown, and said, well, we're just going to go after what he calls Democrat employees in the federal government. That's illegal. We have civil servants that are like those that work in the special education department in the Department of Education, that ensure that kids who have special needs across the country in public schools are able to get the services that they need that are required under federal law. But he tried to fire half that department. It's just partisan and disgusting. My way or the highway. People need affordable health care. Everyone in America knows that. And that's why this needs to get resolved in a negotiated way. The Republicans actually have to show up to work in order for us to do that.
But according to this poll, most of the country does believe that Democrats deserve some responsibility here. Even more of the country believes Democrats and Republicans share a moderate size of the blame here. Where do you think the disconnect is when it comes to messaging then? Do you think Democrats need to do something different when it comes to messaging?
The majority in that poll said that Democrats were on the right track. And we are on the right track and the public agrees with us, because they think that their health care should be affordable. That there's no games playing with this message. It's not a message. It's a policy. The policy should be that we keep people's health care affordable. Look, Donald Trump has done nothing except make life more expensive for folks around their family dinner table. And we need to make sure that, because we've got groceries that are way too high, rent is way too high, you have property taxes that are way too high, we have to not cause explosive increases in healthcare too, because that will drive people to get sicker and not be able to afford their healthcare. And we all end up paying for that. People who don't have an Affordable Care Act policy shouldn't think that they're in the clear here, because those costs get shifted to all of us. And health insurance companies will increase everyone's premiums because they have to make up the difference in the loss of healthcare beneficiaries from somewhere.
There have been reports of a potential off-ramp being discussed by a bipartisan group of senators. There would be two votes, one to reopen the government and another one on extending Obamacare subsidies by a year, with the agreement to pass a more permanent solution at a date further down the road. Are those conversations happening? I know that you aren't in the Senate, but do you think those conversations, or have you heard those conversations happening between Democrats and Republicans? And is that an off-ramp, or is that something that you could get behind?
Any conversation that happens about how to bring a resolution to this Republican-caused shutdown and healthcare crisis needs to be done at the same time. There's no trust. Donald Trump's not trustworthy. He has indiscriminately decided to make billions of dollars in cuts unlawfully when Congress has passed those into law, and we have the constitutional authority for the power of the purse. So Donald Trump can't be trusted to not fire more people. He can't even be trusted to implement a deal the way Congress passes it. So no, passing one thing and then another is not the appropriate approach to resolve this crisis. It all has to be done at once so that we can make sure that the deal is solidified on both issues.
I know that this is coming down to healthcare for Democrats, but there are going to be people that aren't getting their paychecks, furloughed federal workers, hundreds of thousands of them. This is, according to House Speaker Mike Johnson, it could be one of the longest shutdowns in American history. The longest one, as we know, is 35 days. What do you tell those people that aren't going to be getting their paychecks?
If Republicans make this the longest shutdown in history, then they are going to continue to get blamed for that. It's outrageous that Mike Johnson has not called the House back into session. Typically, in previous other shutdowns, stayed in Washington, because when you're there, ready to work, sitting at the table, ready to discuss the kinds of approaches and compromises that are possible, then the likelihood of a long government shutdown is less. And that's how we've resolved these difficulties and challenges before. Mike Johnson and his Republican cronies, the MAGA extremists that worship at the altar of Jeffrey Epstein's best friend, they don't care. They don't care about people's access to quality, affordable health care. They don't care that there are more people that will die as a result of their inaction and their refusal to address this. They need to pay attention to what their colleague Marjorie Taylor Greene is saying, because she apparently has her finger on the pulse of working families who she's obviously come to understand are going to be put into a significant crisis. Look, as someone who was diagnosed with breast cancer almost 18 years ago, and one day I was the picture of health, and then the next day I found a lump in my breast that turned out to be breast cancer, thank God I had healthcare coverage. I was able to go right to the doctor. I was covered for the 15 months of surgery and treatments that I needed. I would probably either not be here talking to you now if I had not had healthcare coverage and the ability to go get my cancer taken care of, or I would be in so much medical debt that my family would have been crushed under it. And that is the choice that Republicans are forcing millions of people into if we don't address this healthcare crisis, this healthcare cliff that they're going to push people over if they dig in and continue to keep the government shut.
I think there's a point here where no side wants to appear like they're caving, appear like they're weak. Do you think that that's what we're seeing right now? Because back in March, we saw Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer. He made that 11th hour switch for the CR vote, and he really got criticized over that. I've talked to House Democrats. They said that they have felt betrayed by that vote. Then you saw what happened to House Speaker Kevin McCarthy 2 years ago, and you saw when he worked with Democrats, that led to his ultimate ouster. Do you think there is a sense of the people don't want to bend because they don't want to see their political futures dimmed?
This isn't about politics for Democrats. This is about healthcare. This is about access to quality, affordable healthcare. Affordable healthcare is absolutely critical. Affordability in life right now is in jeopardy. People are not able to afford a full cart of groceries. If their premiums skyrocket, as so many in my district will, then they'll have to make very tough decisions like that. They'll have to decide how much groceries can I afford this week? Do I have to try to skip a month's rent and be able to pay my premiums, or do I have to drop my coverage entirely? Those are absolutely outrageous choices that no one should be forced into, and it's completely unnecessary. Let's go back to Washington, sit down at the table, and negotiate an end-of-year fiscal spending plan that ensures that we don't push people over the healthcare cliff, and that we can reopen the government and continue to ensure that the quality of life of people in America return them to affordability, which Donald Trump has made more expensive.
And where are those areas that Democrats are willing to compromise here when it comes to these subsidies, when it comes to health care? What does that really look like?
What it looks like is coming back to Washington and sitting down at the table and working through our differences. That's what it looks like. Republicans are refusing that right now.
And for you, what are some of those red lines that you're not budging here on?
I'm not going to negotiate in a public interview. We have to come back to Washington and sit down together, work as members of Congress together to resolve this crisis, which was entirely manufactured by Republicans.
And like we said earlier in this interview, the shutdown is looking to be like a long one. Speaker Mike Johnson said it's close to, or it's barreling toward one of the longest shutdowns in American history. How long is this going to last?
You have to ask Mike Johnson and Jeffrey Epstein's best friend in the White House. I mean, we could reopen the government tomorrow if they just agree to extend the enhanced premium tax credits, not for a year, but permanently, so that people have the certainty that they need, that they're going to be able to afford their coverage. You don't have a temporary need for healthcare. You have a permanent need for affordable healthcare. And we have to make sure that we can get people in a place where they know that worry is taken off the table. At the very least, we have to come back to Washington together and sit down and work through what that could look like. What are the possibilities? If Republicans have ideas on how to approach ensuring that we can cancel the cuts and lower healthcare costs and save Americans' healthcare, we're all ears. We're also at the table, and they're not.
Congresswoman, I appreciate your time today. As always, I always appreciate the conversations. You are welcome back anytime. And as we see what happens next in the shutdown, I hope you can come back on. Thanks for joining me.
Always a pleasure. Thanks, Brittany. Take care.